Hello everyone and welcome back to The Little Quilter. Today we're going to be starting a new quilt, a new project. I know I've got a couple other projects going on, but I've got to get this one going because unfortunately I'm a bit late on getting it started. And this is my Christmas quilt for my family's Christmas, well, my husband's family and my family's Christmas party that we do annually. And for the past 2 years, I've completed a quilt and have given that away at the Christmas party. And so I did want to continue that. I got a little bit behind on getting those things done with some of the other projects that I had going on. And now we're a little bit into crunch time, I feel like. So I do have the fabric. It came in of what I'm going to be using. So this is the Helen Black Candy Cane Christmas Fabric Bundle, and I just thought it looked really, really fun and colorful for a Christmas fabric. Obviously, I can't do an entire quilt with this, so I also purchased 2 of these because I wasn't sure how much I was going to need, kind of my typical MO here. And this is, I think one of these is, I'll have to look up. You know what I'll do? I'll put it down below. I can't remember. There was something like Christmas in the Woods and Christmas in the Cabin or Christmas in the City. But this is one of those. And then you can see there's definitely other in this little section here, but pretty colorful ones. And then the last one that I have here, I think this is the Christmas in the Cabins one. So I bought these as well, and I'll sort of go through the fabric as we work on it. Now, that is the colors for the blocks themselves. For the background fabric, I have this beautiful laundry basket fabric. I think this is her linen bisque, if I remember correctly. So purchased a whole bunch of this. I plan on actually using this in 2 ways. So whatever I have left over as I work through this project, I'm going to use this on the Bumblebee quilt. I think it'll be a beautiful fabric to sort of do the sashing around it. It's a nice kind of off-white cream color that's going to mix well with her fabrics, of course. And I think it'll be really nice as a white, sort of off-white color to go ahead and highlight these really fun colors. To me, this style is kind of like an old retro Christmas style. And so you may be thinking now, well, what are you actually making? And that is a good question. And what I will be doing this time around is some more paper piecing. I feel like this is going to be my most challenging paper piecing yet. So by the end of it, I may actually hate paper piecing because I have already had to work a little bit on some test blocks and to figure out what I was doing and kind of relearn how to paper piece in this sort of fashion, because the Bumblebee quilt is paper piecing, but it's not paper piecing like this. So I can't show you guys any of this because on here she definitely has noted that she doesn't want any videos of this, and she doesn't actually have any videos of her doing it. The instructions are basically no instructions. So when you purchase this, this is from KidGiddy. It's a paper piecing pattern, but there are no instructions. So you have to know how to do paper piecing, or you're going to have to look up how to do paper piecing. They are numbered to help you, as most paper piecing patterns are, as to how you should, what order you should go in whenever you piece that. So if I get a chance, maybe I can go over that to sort of teach you guys or give you a refresher course on how to do that, okay? But yes, so this is my plan, is doing an ugly sweater one. I tried to design one, to be totally honest, in EQ8, and I am not there in designing stuff with regards to paper piecing at this point. I'm still trying to figure out how I do it on my own. So I'm going to go ahead and get started in ironing some of this fabric and working on at least one block tonight. I'm hoping to get a little bit done so I can show you guys kind of what the idea of it is. And I think I'm going to start with this beautiful fabric here, because this was actually this is the fabric I was drawn to and kind of what started looking for some of those other patterns as well. All right, let's jump into this. All right, so I have completed the first block, and it's pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited. Look at it. Oh my gosh, I love this. This was the fabric that not started the quilt. That's a little extreme. I definitely wanted to do the ugly sweater quilt, but I was struggling with choosing Christmas fabric because, you know, I don't want anything too kitschy, too, like, I don't know. But this felt kind of retro. I don't know why it feels retro to me, but this felt kind of retro, and I just sort of springboarded from this, and I love it so, so much. My plan currently is to do, I think, so this finishes around 10 inches. And so my plan is to do like a 4x6 maybe, and I'm gonna do some sashing in between, so 4 10-inch blocks with sashing in between to give more of like a large throw. That's kind of my idea. Part of that is because I'm starting pretty late for a Christmas quilt that I've got to get finished. So I didn't want to make too many blocks because originally I was kind of looking at just doing just these blocks and no sashing, and I don't know that I would get it done in time, to be totally honest. So I was super excited to come up and sort of brainstorm and think and be like, you know what, I don't have to do that. I don't need to make 42 blocks or be crazy. I just need to make a few blocks. So I am very excited by this, and I hope that you guys will join along. I'm going to keep working on getting some of these done, and I'll show you a few more here in a little bit. So as I am working on this paper piecing, I thought I might give you guys a little bit of a insight into paper piecing, and mainly that's just because if you're wanting to do this sort of paper piecing tutorial here, so here is one of the sleeves that I'm working on right now, there aren't any directions on how to do this. Now, if you've paper pieced before, then you probably understand why there aren't any directions. But if you haven't paper pieced before, then starting with this is going to be a little overwhelming and a little confusing. It doesn't take much, and the other side of it is once you get started, you're going to do great at it. And the more that you work on the same paper piecing project, the faster you're going to get and the more confident you're going to get as you make it. So let's go through a little bit of how to paper piece, and I have got a different paper piecing pattern here. So this is the puzzle ball. It's from it's a 6x6 inch block. I'm not going to do the whole block, but I just want to go through kind of steps to show you what you should be looking at. So this is from the EQ8. It's a print off. So the first thing, whenever you get your print off of your pattern, you're going to want to consider cutting out your sections, but don't cut right up next to this 1/4 inch seam. So you want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room and a little bit of room to be able to cut fabric away. I find with paper piecing, the accuracy and the beauty of it comes because you're able to get such great cuts along your seams, and those happen because you've got excess fabric. That may not be everybody's favorite thing to hear about paper piecing because we always want to conserve our fabric and make our cuts as perfect as possible, but in this instance, that's not really the case. You end up with a beautiful block because you've wasted a little bit of fabric, right? The other side of that, though, to remember is that a lot of these patterns you're doing, you wouldn't get this same shape doing a normal, traditionally pieced block, right? So back to this right here. So for this guy, you wouldn't get this sleeve would be incredibly difficult to do in a non-paper pieced, and you certainly wouldn't get an entire sleeve of it, right? You wouldn't get an entire tree. They would be cut for traditional piecing, okay? All right, let's jump into the paper piecing component. Okay, so I've got my paper piecing block here, and I'm going to, I think, probably look at this block right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out. and I'll set these to the side. Now, you may notice that with this block, I cut around this 1/4 inch seam and left, this open space here. And the primary reason for that is it's just easier to give yourself room, right? Now, when we're looking at this block, what we're going to do, you may be thinking, where am I going to start? And these numbers are going to give you your starting point. So you'd want to take a piece of fabric and cover A1 and A2. And this seam right here is going to be your starting point. Now, let me grab some fabric and I'll show you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you just an example, and then we're going to actually show you how to do it, because the way that you lay these blocks out initially is going to be based on this layout here, but we have to sew on top of this, so you actually want to lay it out upside down, okay? When we do that, it makes it a little hard. This is why a lot of people have a light box, which I have right over here on the side, or they just hold it up to a light so that they can see behind it really well. As just to show you all, what we're going to be doing is your first piece, right, this A1 piece wants to be face up whenever you're sewing it, and your A2 piece is going to be face down, and that's because you're going to be folding this block over, okay? Okay, again, we have to turn this over because we need to sew on it. So this is my A1 block, which fortunately with this color doesn't matter, but you would want this side to be facing up. So the right side of the fabric up. And then what we're going to do is take our A2 block and we're going to place it over the top of it. And actually, we're going to face it over the top of it so that that 1/4 inch seam that's right here is covered. So we have a little bit of a 1/4 inch seam so that when we sew this and flip it over, it's covering the whole block, and that's what it's going to look like right there, okay? Let me do that real quick for you all. All right, so now we have sewn this, and you can see there's my line of stitching, okay? So I flipped it over so that I could see where I was supposed to stitch between A1 and A2. And then what we've got here on the back is that same, okay? So you've got the right side of fabric up, and for the A2 block, the right side of the fabric is down, and you'll be able to just flip those over and cut. Now, before you do that, what you might want to do is where you've got this seam here, you can take it, fold your paper over, and if you had excess fabric here, you could easily cut that away. So there's just a smidge here. So you would cut that away and then fold it back over, and you could iron this. So that's going to give you this really nice clean block right here, okay? The next step is going to be to sew A3 and then A4, A5, and so on and so forth out. Now, when we do this, now you have this block. Let's see. So if you look here, A3 is the next block here. So we would take our fabric, cut another little piece of fabric here, and you want to make sure that you cut so that that fabric is fully covering it. Again, it is better to overcut for this fabric so that you can cut it away accurately than undercut. An example of where that didn't work out for me here is you can see right here. So in this corner, I didn't account for enough fabric here, and there's a little bit of a gap. Now, the good news is that I'm within the 1/4 inch seam, and so it's going to be fine. And the same for up here. I didn't move my strip. I should have moved my strip farther up so that whenever I flipped it over, I covered the entire 1/4, right? So just make sure, as long as you're within this 1/4 inch frame right here, remembering that you're going to sew the next piece to this 1/4 inch. And so you're going to have that little bit of give. So as long as your fabric is over this line right here, you're going to be fine, because some people will actually only do 1/8 of an inch rather than a full 1/4 inch to decrease the seam bulkiness, okay? So let's go ahead and I'm going to sew. This is my A3 block, and I'm going to put it on the back here. Come over to my light box just to make sure that I've got a little bit of an overhang. So you can see here, I've got that overhang. And sometimes it's easier to see this way, but it's hard on camera to show you. So I'm going to sew across this line. All right, and now we've got that. And what you want to do is, just like before, fold this over, okay? And you can cut your 1/4 inch. Now you can see this time I have a lot more excess fabric. So don't be worried if you have a lot hanging off. As you cut your fabric down, you will see that get smaller and smaller. But what you will also see is that your block gets neater and neater. So you can already see how much more neat that looks. All right, we're just going to do this again, and I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these A4 so that we can move on to that outer block, all right? Okay, everybody, now you can see here we've got all 4 of our blocks. So we've gone through A1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and all that's left to do is A6, 7, 8, and 9. So let's pick out some colors. Okay, now I've got all of these. We're going to flip this over, look for our next number, which is going to be A6. Do the same thing that we did, so taking our piece, the right side of the fabric to the wrong side of this, right? So flipped over, and we're going to line this up here, just like this. And I'm guessing that it's probably going to be around that range right there to cover that 1/4 inch seam. I could check it over here with my light box and adjust. So adjust it as you need to with the light box, and then we're going to sew that. Once it's sewn, doing the exact same thing, we're going to go through here and trim off our extras. And this is going to start to make those previous squares actually start to look more like triangles, which is exciting. Here's 8, 7, so I'm going to do the same thing for all of these. Okay, now I have got this all sewn together. A little bit concerned about here, but remember, I've left a lot of fabric here, so I shouldn't be too concerned if it's a little bit peeking out. What we can do is now trim this down, okay? Remember, when you are going to trim your final block, so we've sewn all of these pieces together, we do not want to trim into this solid line or into this 1/4 inch seam. So we want to take our roller, line it up so that a dotted line or whatever it may be that you're using to mark that 1/4 inch seam is still giving you that 1/4 inch seam. So this line right here is my 1/4 inch seam, and I've lined it up so that it continues. We're then going to trim all of this away and see how I've still left this 1/4 inch seam. And the reason that that's important to do is because if you are joining this block to anything else, you're going to need that 1/4 inch seam to line up and sew to. And that way, when you sew your final piece, you don't end up with a block that you're cutting off any of your points or squares or whatever it may be, or circles, because you sewed into that 1/4 inch line. All right, so let's flip this over and see. And look how beautiful that looks. Didn't actually realize that this is an economy block, which is kind of cool. So I've got a little bitty baby economy block, and maybe I can put that into my strip quilt. It's just a bit short, but that's okay. Maybe I can add a little strip on the side and put it into that. So it's a beautiful little block. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of how to do paper piecing and how to take a page like this and turn it into an actual quilt block. My key thing when you're first starting is just always remember to look for that A1 or A2 or whatever numbering or letter system it is. Just look for the number 1 and the number 2 and start there with your seam, and you'll be able to build off from there in a proper way so that you end up with a quilt block that looks like it's supposed to. The other things that are helpful to have are certainly a light bar that can help you to just line your blocks up better, and so that you know you're sewing accurately on that 1/4 inch seam. It's also helpful to have a ruler. I don't have, but I have ordered a ruler. I think it's like Give an Eighth. I'll link it down below, but they make very specific rulers for paper piecing that are kind of like block lock rulers, in that they have a little bit of a lip to sort of grab what you're supposed to be cutting and make it easier to do paper piecing and to cut. And they also come in a 1/4 inch seam and an 1/8 of an inch seam, so that if you would prefer to have a thinner or less bulky seam line, you can cut your seams smaller than that. The last thing that I'm going to say before we jump back into quilting for the Christmas quilt is that you do want to make sure on your stitch length, I didn't say anything about stitch length, but you want to keep that stitch length super small so that it makes it easier to tear this away. I also feel like then it just makes it a little bit sturdier. When you are ripping it away, you have a lot of stitches in there to hold everything together. Okay, I hope that that was helpful, but now I'm going to go ahead and jump back into working on this quilt block so that I can get this ugly sweater quilt block done. I think I have to do about 20 is what I've decided to do for the final quilt, and I'm going to probably add some borders on there and some sashing to help the size of the quilt, but also not have to do so many, because obviously it's getting a little bit late in the season to be making a Christmas quilt, but I've still got plenty of time and I've got determination to get it done. All right, everybody, so I have got 5 blocks completed already, and I've only done the Candy Cane Christmas by Helen Black fabric so far. So all of the fabrics that I have used are from that, except for the background, which is the bisque fabric, a bisque linen fabric from Laundry Basket Fabrics, and I was going to use this fabric for probably the sashing and stuff there as well. So here's that first one, well, not the first block, but one of them, and it just had the stripes. I really love the way this one looks. I think it looks really, really cool, kind of like a real sweater would look. And so there is that one. This one is the next one. I love this one as well. I kind of fussy cut a little bit to get some of the, I wanted to get a whole house in there, so I wanted to make sure we had that. I love these candy canes and the trees, and then along the sides, just getting what I can. I can't always predict exactly where it's going to land, because a lot of these, when they fold on that diagonal, they kind of fold up and over, and so sometimes I get some things in there that I didn't think I was going to, but I really love this little like figgy cake pudding here. This is the one that started it all, of course, so I just love this fabric. I think it's so much fun. And yeah, I just think it's fun. Oh, the one thing I will say is the fabric here for all of the cuffs has been from the candy cane line, but it is just this red candy cane fabric right here. So that's all that I have used for the cuffs to just keep it consistent. I thought with all of the colors and everything that just having one part of those fabrics consistent might actually end up looking a little bit better. You could definitely switch it up and do something different. And then I've got this really pretty green one right here with the Christmas trees on it. And I love how it turned out. Again, the only thing that I am not as happy about, although I really don't think in the grand scheme of things that it will be noticeable at all, is that I wish I had used a little bit different fabric here, because I feel like I basically got the same tree in here. And I don't know, I think that just looks a little bit odd if you really pay attention. But once the quilt's done, nobody's going to notice that. But that's just my opinion. Other people will probably say, I didn't even notice, it doesn't matter, which is true. And then the last one I've got here, so I've done 5 blocks, is this one with the little stockings on there. And I think this one is a lot of fun too. I really think the red complements that navy blue really nicely. So this is another fun one. Able to get some really good stockings on there. I was able to do really good on this. And I love this guy right here. This little gingerbread man is just kind of like peeking out like, hey. So, all right, everybody, those are the 5 blocks that I've done. I have got 15 more to do, and I'm going to try and get it done within this month. So I've really been focusing on this, but I've also put another quilt onto the long arm. So I'm gonna have to kind of balance things, because obviously there's a bit of a time crunch on this one that it has to be done by December. So my hope is to get the quilt done during this month of October, and then to get it onto the frame and quilt it all in November. So we'll see if I can do that, but that's the ugly sweater quilt that I'm working on for Christmas. And as always, I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. If you are interested in this ugly sweater design, I will link it down below so that you guys can go to the Etsy shop. She may have a website, I'm not really sure. And then, as always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.